was such a high-tech kind of construction that it boggled everyone's mind.
Across deserts, mountains, oceans, and buried cities, ancient structures and artifacts continue to challenge everything we believe about human history. These discoveries do not simply raise questions.
We have been unable to date themselves. They could be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years old. We don't know.
They break timelines, defy known technology, and force scientists to admit uncertainty.
You can't just dismiss all of this as pure coincidence.
For centuries, Western researchers trying to answer these questions.
These are 20 archaeological discoveries that still resist explanation and quietly suggest that humanity's past may be far stranger, darker, and more advanced than we are prepared to accept. Göbekli Tepe. Long before anyone planted crops or built villages, people gathered on a lonely hill in what is now southeastern Turkey and carried out an act that still frightens modern researchers. Göbekli Tepe dates back more than 11,600 years, to a time when humans were supposed to be simple nomads struggling to survive. Instead of small camps or crude shelters, archaeologists uncovered a massive stone complex built with care, precision, and intent. Enormous T-shaped limestone pillars rise from the earth, some weighing nearly 20 tons, and every one of them was carved by hand, using stone tools alone. The carvings are not random or rough. They show clear images of dangerous animals, including lions, snakes, boars, and vultures. These were not decorations meant to please the eye. They appear controlled, deliberate, and repeated across the site, as if the builders shared strict rules about what could be carved and where. There are no signs of homes nearby, which means people traveled long distances just to work here. That fact alone is disturbing because it suggests fear, belief, or obligation strong enough to force people to abandon safety and comfort. The true terror comes from what happened later. Around 8000 BCE, the entire complex was intentionally buried. Tons of soil, stone, fragments, and debris were carefully placed to cover the pillars completely. There is no sign of war invasion or natural disaster. The builders themselves chose to hide it. Archaeologists still cannot explain why people would erase something that required such effort. Some believe the site was closed after rituals ended. Others fear knowledge or practices were sealed away on purpose. Standing among the pillars today, researchers often describe a feeling of being watched even though nothing moves. The Nazca lines. In the burning deserts of southern Peru, there are marks so large that the human mind struggles to accept how they were made. The Nazca lines stretch across nearly 200 square miles of open land where heat, silence, and isolation dominate every moment. These massive figures were created between 500 BCE and 500 CE by people who had no way to see their work from above. That fact alone creates deep unease because the designs only make sense when viewed from the sky. On the ground, the lines feel meaningless as they cut through sand and stone with no clear pattern. But from the air, they transform into perfect animals, plants, shapes, and strange human-like figures that appear planned, measured, and exact. Some stretch hundreds of feet and remain straight across uneven ground. There is no evidence of towers, mountains, or platforms high enough to guide such work. The Nazca people could not fly, and yet they drew images meant only to be seen from above. Researchers have tried to recreate the process using rope, stakes, and ground planning. These experiments explain parts of the mystery, but not the scale, consistency, and mathematical control across such vast distances. The desert preserved the lines because of its dry, still climate, which means every mistake would have remained visible. There is little room for error, and yet errors are rare. What makes the story darker is the absence of daily life around the lines. These were not roads or farms or gathering places. They were never meant to be lived in or walked through. They were meant to be observed. The question of who was meant to see them remains unanswered. Some researchers suggest ritual paths tied to water and survival. Others point to astronomical alignment. None fully explain why such effort was spent on something invisible to its creators. When modern pilots first saw the lines from the air, many described a shock that felt almost personal, as if the desert had been waiting. The Nazca lines do not feel abandoned. They feel deliberately displayed to something that was never human. Sacsayhuamán. High above the city of Cusco, there is a stone structure that seems to reject every rule of ancient construction. Sacsayhuamán was built by the Inca roughly 1,000 years ago, and its walls still stand despite centuries of violent earthquakes that destroyed much of the surrounding city. The fortress is made of enormous limestone blocks, some weighing more than 300 tons, and every stone is cut to fit its neighbors with frightening precision. There is no mortar holding these walls together. Instead, each block was shaped into complex curves and angles that lock together so tightly that even thin metal cannot slide between them. The Inca had no iron tools, no wheeled transport, and no animals capable of moving such massive stones. The terrain is steep and uneven, and yet the stones were lifted, placed and aligned with near-perfect accuracy. Some surfaces are smooth, while others curve inward and outward as if molded rather than carved. This has led to theories about stone softening methods, but no physical evidence supports those ideas. Traditional cutting methods also fail to explain how such shapes were achieved consistently across the site. Modern engineers study the walls and admit they would struggle to replicate the design even with modern equipment. What adds to the fear is how the structure responds to earthquakes. Instead of cracking or collapsing, the stones shift slightly and then settle back into place. This requires advanced understanding of force movement and balance. Archaeologists still debate whether Sacsayhuamán was a military fortress, a ceremonial center, or something else entirely. There are no clear records, and the oral histories are fragmented. Standing inside the walls gives a sense of being inside a machine built to survive disaster. The stones feel intentional, alert, and controlled. Sacsayhuamán does not look like an experiment. It looks like the result of knowledge that should not have existed at the time. The Longyou Caves. When farmers in eastern China drained a pond in 1992, they uncovered something that should never have existed without leaving a record. Beneath the water lay a massive hand-carved entrance leading into the Longyou Caves, which are now considered one of the largest underground construction projects ever discovered. Inside were vast chambers carved directly into solid rock with ceilings reaching nearly 100 feet high. Every surface inside the caves is marked with identical chisel lines, carved at the same angle and depth. The walls, ceilings, and pillars are perfectly aligned and symmetrical. There are no cracks, no signs of collapse or structural failure despite the enormous weight of stone above. No support beams were used and no reinforcement exists. The caves simply hold themselves together. Experts estimate that carving even one chamber would require hundreds of workers over decades using basic tools. There are at least 24 known caves, and no one knows why they were made. There are no inscriptions, no artwork, no tools, and no signs of long-term occupation. They were not tombs, storage areas, or shelters. They served no clear function. What makes the discovery terrifying is the total absence of historical records. Chinese history is detailed and well documented, yet there is no mention of such a massive project. An effort of this scale would have required leadership planning and resources on a level equal to major cities. But somehow, it completely vanished. Walking through the caves feels unnatural because nothing appears accidental. Every angle, every cut, and every chamber feels planned. The silence inside is heavy and unchanged since the day the tools stopped moving. The Longyou Caves suggest that entire civilizations or massive efforts can disappear without leaving a name or a reason. Puma Punku. At nearly 13,000 feet above sea level in the Bolivian Andes, there is a ruined complex that unsettles engineers and historians alike. Puma Punku contains massive blocks of andesite and sandstone, with some weighing over 100 tons. These stones are cut with precision that appears almost mechanical. Straight edges, perfect right angles, and drilled holes appear across the site with consistent measurements. The builders had access only to stone and simple bronze tools, yet the accuracy rivals modern machine work. Some blocks are shaped like standardized components, as if they were meant to be assembled in specific ways. This implies careful planning measurement and advanced understanding of geometry. Transporting the stones across rough mountainous terrain without wheels or strong animals adds another layer of mystery. Radiocarbon dating places. Puma Punku around 1,500 years old, but many researchers argue the site may be older. The erosion patterns and construction techniques do not align cleanly with known methods from that time. No explanation fully accounts for how the stones were cut, drilled, transported, and fitted together so precisely. What makes the site disturbing is how unfinished it appears. Blocks lie scattered as if work stopped suddenly. There is no evidence of disaster invasion or abandonment under pressure. It feels like a project frozen in time. Puma Punku does not feel ancient in the usual sense. It feels incomplete. It suggests that something went wrong, or something forced the builders to leave before their work was done. The Yonaguni Monument. Off the coast of Japan near Yonaguni Island, there is a submerged structure that has divided scientists for decades. Discovered in 1986, the Yonaguni Monument lies about 80 feet underwater and covers a wide area of the sea floor. It features massive stone formations that resemble steps, terraces, flat platforms, and sharp-angled edges. Supporters of the man-made theory point to the repeated right angles, straight lines, and layered design. Some claim the structure shows signs of roads, ceremonial spaces, and carved surfaces. If this is true, then the monument would date back more than 10,000 years to a time before known Japanese civilization. This possibility threatens to rewrite regional history entirely. Skeptics argue that natural geological forces can create similar shapes through erosion and tectonic movement. However, these explanations struggle to account for the consistency and scale across the entire structure. No tools or artifacts have been found, which leaves the debate unresolved. Exploration is difficult due to depth currents and limited visibility. Large sections remain unexplored. The ocean hides details that could confirm or deny human involvement. What makes the site unsettling is how closely it resembles intentional design while remaining just out of reach of proof. Divers often report a strange feeling when moving across the stone surfaces, as if walking through a place not meant to be underwater. The structure does not feel random. It feels misplaced. Easter Island, Moai. Scattered across Easter Island stand nearly 1,000 massive stone figures known as Moai, and their presence is overwhelming. Carved by the Rapa Nui people between 800 and 1,000 years ago, these statues can weigh up to 80 tons and reach over 30 feet tall. They were carved from volcanic rock using simple tools and then transported across the island. The land is rough, uneven, and isolated, which raises serious questions about how the statues were moved. The islanders had no wheels, no metal tools, and limited natural resources. Modern experiments suggest the statues were moved upright, using ropes causing them to rock forward slowly. While this method works in controlled settings, it does not fully explain long-distance transport or the sheer number of statues completed. Many Moai were left unfinished in quarries, while others were found fallen along ancient paths. This suggests movement failures or sudden interruptions. What adds to the mystery is the discovery that the famous heads have full bodies buried beneath the soil, complete with carvings that were hidden for centuries. No written records explain why the statues were built, moved, or abandoned. Oral traditions offer fragments, but no full answers. The effort required to create the Moai would have placed enormous strain on the population. Standing near the statues creates a heavy sense of expectation, as if they were meant to serve a purpose that was never completed. The Moai do not feel decorative, they feel demanding. They represent belief powerful enough to reshape an island and then collapse without explanation. Great Zimbabwe. Rising from the landscape of southern Africa, the ruins of Great Zimbabwe tell a story that was long denied and still remains incomplete. Built around 900 years ago, the city covers more than 700 hectares and includes massive stone walls reaching 30 feet high. The stones were stacked without mortar, and yet the walls remain stable after centuries of exposure. Early European scholars refused to accept that local African populations built the city and instead assigned it to foreign cultures. Modern archaeology confirms the Shona people were responsible, but many questions remain unanswered. The stones were shaped and placed with remarkable precision, and the scale of the city suggests complex organization and leadership. Artifacts found at the site reveal trade connections reaching as far as China and the Middle East. This indicates Great Zimbabwe was a major economic center. Despite this, there are no written records explaining how the city was governed or why it was abandoned. The decline appears sudden. There is no clear evidence of invasion, famine, or environmental collapse. The population simply left, and the reason remains unknown. Great Zimbabwe stands as proof that powerful societies can vanish while leaving behind structures that refuse to fall. The eerie silence of the city is its most disturbing feature. Roman dodecahedrons. Across the lands once controlled by the Roman Empire, archaeologists continue to uncover small bronze objects that feel deeply wrong in every detail. These objects are known as Roman dodecahedrons, and more than 100 have been found scattered across Europe. They date back nearly 1,800 years and appear in places that were once busy military and trade centers. Each object has 12 flat faces shaped like pentagons, with a circular hole in the center of every face and small rounded knobs at each corner. No two examples are exactly the same. What makes these objects disturbing is not their design, but their complete absence from history. No Roman writer mentioned them, no artwork shows them in use, no inscriptions explain what they were for. The Romans documented nearly everything from tools to rituals to household items. Yet these objects exist without a single word to explain them. The holes vary in size and do not align in any consistent measurement system. The surfaces show no signs of wear, burning, threading, or attachment. This eliminates most practical explanations. Scholars have proposed countless theories, including measuring tools, religious items, game pieces, or devices used in textile work. But each theory collapses under scrutiny. If they were tools, their inconsistent design makes no sense. If they were sacred objects, their complete absence from written religion is impossible to explain. If they were common, then why are so few found? Holding one creates a strange feeling because it is clearly manufactured with care and intention. Someone designed it, someone used it, someone understood its purpose, and that knowledge may be gone forever. Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni. Beneath the modern streets of Malta lies a place that feels intentionally hidden from the surface world. The Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni is a vast underground structure carved entirely from limestone more than 5,000 years ago. It was created long before metal tools existed, and yet it spans 3 underground levels filled with chambers, corridors, and carefully shaped spaces. Every wall was cut by hand with precision and patience over generations. Thousands of human remains were discovered inside, stacked and placed in ways that suggest ritual activity rather than simple burial. This alone would make the site unsettling, but the most disturbing feature is sound. One chamber inside the Hypogeum reacts strongly to male voices at a frequency around 110 Hz. When a voice reaches this range, the walls vibrate and the sound travels through the entire complex. Modern tests show that this vibration affects the human nervous system and can cause changes in mood awareness and physical sensation. This means the builders understood acoustics in a way that should not have existed at the time. They shaped the chamber intentionally to produce this effect. The structure was not only a place of stone, but a place of controlled sound. Some skulls found inside show elongation, which has sparked debate and discomfort, though no clear explanation exists. There are no records of who built the Hypogeum or why it was eventually abandoned. The culture responsible left no writing behind. Walking through the chambers today creates a heavy sense of presence, as if the space itself is watching and listening. Ubaid lizard figurines. In the ruins of ancient Mesopotamian settlements, archaeologists uncovered small clay figurines that immediately caused unease. These figures date back nearly 7,000 years to the Ubaid period, a time known for early farming and village life. Yet these figurines do not resemble animals, people, or fertility symbols common to that era. Instead, they show elongated heads, slanted eyes, narrow faces, and bodies covered in scale-like patterns. The designs are consistent across multiple sites, which means they were not the result of individual imagination. Someone was intentionally creating the same form again and again. Some figures are shown holding infants, while others stand alone with rigid posture and blank expressions. There are no known myths, texts, or carvings from the Ubaid culture that explain what these figures represent. Scholars have suggested they may depict gods, ritual costumes, or symbolic beings meant to represent authority or protection, but none of these ideas fit comfortably with the lack of supporting evidence. There are no temples dedicated to such forms, and no art showing humans dressed this way. The figures exist in isolation from everything else we know about the culture. More extreme ideas suggest non-human influence, but there is no proof to support such claims. What remains is a group of objects that feel out of place within their own time. Dendera light relief. Inside the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, there are stone reliefs that continue to disturb both scholars and visitors. These carvings date back roughly 2,000 years and show elongated bulb-shaped forms with internal snake-like figures connected to what appear to be cables or supports. To modern eyes, the images strongly resemble electrical lamps and wiring. Mainstream Egyptology explains the reliefs as symbolic scenes from Egyptian creation myths involving a snake emerging from a lotus flower. While this explanation exists in texts, many observers struggle to reconcile it with the technical appearance of the carvings. The shapes appear enclosed, supported, and grounded in ways that feel mechanical rather than symbolic. Adding to the discomfort is the condition of the temple corridors. They show little to no soot or smoke residue. If oil lamps or torches were used extensively, the stone should show darkening. This absence raises questions that scholars rarely address directly. There is no physical evidence that ancient Egyptians used electricity, and no devices have been found to prove such technology existed. At the same time, no explanation fully resolves the visual similarity or the lack of lighting residue. Standing before the carvings creates tension because the images feel too familiar. The reliefs do not look accidental or careless, they look intentional and detailed. Whether symbolic or misunderstood technology, the carvings represent knowledge that modern researchers cannot fully explain. Olmec colossal heads. In the jungles and plains of southern Mexico, enormous stone faces stare outward from ancient ceremonial sites. These are the Olmec colossal heads carved from massive basalt boulders around 3,000 years ago. Some weigh over 50 tons, and each one displays unique facial features, expressions, and headgear. Scholars believe they represent powerful rulers, but no written records confirm this. The basalt used to carve the heads was transported from quarries located many miles away, across rivers, swamps, and rough terrain. The Olmec had no metal tools, no wheels, and no beasts of burden capable of moving such weight. Yet the stones were moved, shaped, and polished with remarkable detail and control. Some observers have speculated about foreign influence based on facial traits. Mainstream archaeology rejects these ideas and attributes the features to local populations. Even without outside influence, the logistics remain unexplained. Moving, carving, and erecting these heads would have required complex planning, leadership, and labor on a massive scale. What makes the heads unsettling is their silence. They offer no inscriptions, no names, and no dates. The civilization that created them left no written language behind. The Olmec culture declined and disappeared, leaving only stone and unanswered questions. Egyptian helicopter hieroglyphs. At the Temple of Abydos in Egypt, there are carvings that continue to provoke disbelief and debate. These reliefs date back more than 3,000 years and appear to show shapes resembling helicopters, aircraft, and armored vehicles. The resemblance is strong enough that it immediately captures attention even from trained scholars. Egyptologists explain the images as the result of overlapping hieroglyphs created during temple renovations. When older inscriptions were covered and later recarved, the combined shapes accidentally formed images that resemble modern machines. This explanation is technically plausible and supported by examples of reused stone elsewhere in Egypt. However, many observers remain unconvinced. The shapes appear distinct and clearly defined. The human mind struggles to accept that multiple recognizable forms could appear purely by accident in one location. There is no evidence that ancient Egyptians had advanced machines or aircraft. No physical remains support such claims. At the same time, the carvings continue to provoke discomfort because they challenge visual certainty. Standing before the reliefs creates confusion rather than clarity. Whether by coincidence or illusion, the images refuse to fade into the background. They remain a visual puzzle that forces viewers to question perception, interpretation, and certainty. Derinkuyu Underground City. Deep beneath the dry land of central Turkey lies a place that feels less like a shelter and more like a hidden world built in fear. Derinkuyu is a massive underground city, capable of housing an estimated 20,000 people, along with animals, food supplies, and water. It was discovered by accident in 1963 when a man renovating his home knocked through a wall and found a tunnel leading into darkness. What followed stunned archaeologists. The city descends more than 300 feet into the earth across multiple levels, connected by narrow corridors and stairways. Inside are kitchens, storage rooms, wells, ventilation shafts, schools, chapels, and living quarters. The air system alone is complex enough to supply oxygen to thousands of people for extended periods of time. Heavy stone doors were designed to roll into place, sealing entire sections from the inside. These doors could not be opened from outside once shut. The construction required careful planning and coordination over generations. Every level was carved with purpose. Waste systems were separated from living areas. Water sources were protected from contamination. The deeper levels appear designed for long-term isolation. This was not a temporary hideout built in panic. It was a controlled environment meant to sustain life underground for long periods. No written records explain who built Derinkuyu or when construction truly began. Some parts date back thousands of years, and later civilizations expanded it. Theories suggest refuge from invasion, but no single enemy explains the scale. Others propose protection from environmental disaster, but no evidence confirms this either. Arkalochori axe. Hidden within a cave on the island of Crete, archaeologists discovered a bronze object that refuses to give away its meaning. The Arkalochori axe dates back more than 3,000 years to the Minoan period and is shaped as a double axe known as a labrys. What makes this artifact disturbing is not its form, but the 15 symbols engraved across its surface. The symbols do not match any known written language. They resemble markings found on the Phaistos disc, which itself remains undeciphered. No scholar has been able to translate even a single symbol with certainty. The axe shows no signs of combat use. Its edges are not worn, and its surface appears ceremonial rather than functional. The cave where it was found contained other offerings which suggest ritual use. This implies the symbols held meaning understood by those who placed it there. That meaning is now completely lost. There are no texts, legends, or inscriptions that explain the writing system. Whatever language or code was used vanished without transition. Someone believed these symbols mattered enough to be preserved in bronze. The fact that no one today can read them means an entire system of thought collapsed without leaving a trace. Rongorongo script. On Easter Island, the same land that produced the Moai statues there, once existed a written system that no human alive can read. Rongorongo is an undeciphered script carved into wooden tablets using sharp tools. The glyphs include human figures, animals, plants, and abstract shapes arranged in a unique pattern where every line is written in reverse direction from the one above it. When Europeans arrived, many tablets were destroyed, burned, or repurposed. Missionaries encouraged locals to abandon old traditions, and with that, knowledge died quickly. Those who understood the script were gone within a generation. No translation was ever recorded. The surviving tablets are few and damaged. Scholars have tried for decades to decode them using statistical analysis, linguistic comparison, and pattern recognition, but nothing has ever worked. No one has confidently identified even a single word. This means that we may never know if the tablets had recorded history, rituals, genealogy, or warnings. Tărtăria tablets. In a small Romanian village, archaeologists uncovered 3 clay tablets that immediately caused shock and controversy. The Tărtăria tablets date back more than 7,000 years and contain symbols that closely resemble early Sumerian writing. If the dating is correct, these tablets would predate known writing systems by over 1,000 years. The symbols appear deliberate and repeated, suggesting communication rather than decoration. This challenges long-held beliefs about where and when writing first emerged. Some scholars argue the tablets prove an unknown European civilization existed with advanced symbolic systems. Others argue the symbols are coincidental or ritual marks rather than true writing. The controversy deepened when the tablets were damaged during early testing. This compromised their archaeological context and made verification difficult. Debate continues fiercely with no resolution. What makes the tablets disturbing is what they imply. If authentic, they suggest a complex society existed and disappeared without leaving cities, monuments, or written history. That level of disappearance feels impossible, yet the tablets remain. Dogū and Haniwa figurines. Across ancient Japan, archaeologists uncovered clay figures that appear unlike anything else from their time. The Dogū figurines date back as far as 14,000 years and feature large eyes, elaborate patterns, and body shapes that do not resemble ordinary humans. Later, Haniwa figures also display rigid posture and detailed armor-like designs. These figures were not toys. They were carefully crafted and often buried intentionally. Scholars believe they served ritual or spiritual purposes, but no written explanation exists. Some figures appear broken deliberately, which suggests ritual destruction. The exaggerated eyes and detailed markings have sparked endless debate. Some believe they represent healers, gods, or ceremonial clothing. Others argue they depict concepts or roles now lost entirely. What makes these figures unsettling is their consistency. They follow patterns that imply shared meaning across generations, but that meaning may be gone forever. Mount Nemrut. High atop Mount Nemrut in Turkey sits a massive stone monument built by King Antiochus I more than 2,000 years ago. Giant statues of gods, animals, and the king himself surround a towering mound of crushed stone. The statues are enormous and were transported to the summit using unknown methods. The purpose of the site was said to be funerary. Antiochus claimed it would house his tomb. But despite extensive excavation, no burial chamber has ever been found. The mound resists exploration, as it collapses inward when disturbed. The transportation of the statues remains unexplained. The terrain is steep, remote, and hostile. The scale of effort required is enormous. Standing on the mountain creates isolation and unease. The statues stare outward as if guarding secrets that modern tools have failed to uncover. Make sure to click the cards on the screen now for more interesting videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.